Madison Brooks, originally from Covington, Louisiana, was a 19-year-old sophomore at LSU and a member of the Alpha Phi sorority. Her friends and family described her as a bright, joyful, and compassionate young woman. However, she lost her life in a tragic accident that later revealed a darker series of events leading up to that moment. On the night of January 14th, 2023, Madison decided to spend the evening at Reggie's Bar in Baton Rouge. Reggie's is a well-known location among LSU students, frequently drawing large crowds at night. Almost every weekend night, the bar was crowded with students. There would be loud music blaring and people consuming copious amounts of alcohol. And as we will soon find out, this location allegedly has a history of not properly identifying those who are underage. On the night in question, the bar was particularly busy. Madison, like many of her peers, was seen drinking and hanging out with friends. Surveillance footage later revealed that Madison had consumed a lot of alcohol during her stay. As the night progressed, it became clear that Madison was incredibly intoxicated. She struggled to stand, fell multiple times, and exhibited signs of severe inebriation. During this time at Reggie's Bar, Madison encountered 4 men who play crucial roles in this story. These men were identified as Kyvon Washington, 18, Kason Carver, 18, a 17-year-old male who has not been named due to his status as a minor, and Everett Lee, 28. The initial interactions between Madison and the 4 men appeared to be pretty normal. According to police interviews, Kason Carver recounted that Madison asked them for a ride home. Carver's account indicated that Madison seemed friendly and outgoing, albeit heavily intoxicated, which may have influenced her decision to seek a ride from people she had just met. The 4 men agreed to give her a ride home, but the journey took a turn for the worse. As they traveled, Washington and Carter allegedly pressured Madison into having sex with them. Carver, who was driving the vehicle, later told police that although Madison verbally consented to her intoxicated state raised serious concerns. Again, she was incredibly drunk to the point where she was slurring her words. Carver admitted to feeling uncomfortable with the situation but did not intervene. According to the arrest affidavit, the situation escalated when the vehicle stopped and Everett Lee stepped out. During this time, Washington and the unidentified minor allegedly proceeded to Madison in the car. Despite her impaired state, the men continued their actions. After the alleged assault, the men drove Madison to a neighborhood near Pelican Lakes Parkway. It was approximately 3 a.m. when they left her alone in a dark and unfamiliar area. This put Madison in a very dangerous position. Alone and disoriented, she attempted to navigate her surroundings and find her way home. The area was poorly lit, making it difficult for not only Madison to see, but oncoming traffic was also unable to see her until they got extremely close. Shortly after being dropped off, Madison was struck by a vehicle. The driver did not attempt to flee, but instead got out and contacted medical officials. Ultimately, this driver would not be charged with anything. The first steps taken by investigators involved a thorough examination of the roadway. They collected evidence and sought out any potential witnesses who might have seen Madison prior to the accident. Officials spoke with residents in the area and reviewed camera footage that was recorded by nearby properties. After being told by medical officials that Madison was drunk at the time, investigators visited various bars in the area. Eventually, they stumbled upon Reggie's Bar, and it's here where they made a breakthrough. The bar's security cameras captured the interactions between Madison and the 4 men throughout the night. This footage was crucial in establishing the timeline of events and the involvement of the suspects. The footage showed Madison drinking heavily and interacting with the men. It documented her increasing intoxication, her difficulty standing, and the eventual decision to leave the bar with the men. It was also shown that Madison followed the group of men outside, where she was helped into their vehicle. This evidence was later used to highlight that she was in no condition to make safe decisions for herself. In addition to the surveillance footage, investigators interviewed other patrons and staff members of Reggie's Bar. Multiple witnesses confirmed seeing Madison heavily intoxicated and noted her interactions with the 4 men. With this evidence pointing toward the 4 men, investigators proceeded to conduct interviews with all of them. During the police interrogations, Kason Carver admitted that Madison asked them for a ride home and that she was visibly intoxicated. He recounted that during the ride, Washington and another pressured the woman into having sex. Carver expressed discomfort with the situation but did nothing to stop the assault. In fact, he was quoted saying that he hated it. In addition to physical evidence and eyewitness accounts, investigators turned to digital forensics to strengthen their case. The analysis of cell phone records revealed text messages and calls exchanged between the suspects. It was also revealed that the suspects posted many videos to social media displaying their interactions with Madison. Madison's autopsy and toxicology reports confirmed that she had a blood alcohol level of 0.319. This supported the argument that she was too intoxicated to consent to sex. The autopsy also revealed injuries consistent with rape. The legal proceedings following Madison's death were very complex, to say the least. The initial charges against the four men included third-degree rape for Kyvon Washington and the minor, and principal to third-degree rape for Kason Carver and Everett Lee. As the investigation progressed, a grand jury reviewed the evidence and decided to upgrade the charges against the minor to first-degree rape. Kyvon Washington also faced first-degree rape charges after it was revealed that he had a history of alleged sexual assaults. Washington had prior accusations from 2020 and 2022. These events displayed a consistent disregard for consent and the safety of others. The defense attorneys presented a counter-narrative, arguing that Brooks was not too intoxicated to consent to the activities that occurred. They released a video showing Madison inside the car with the suspects where they argued Madison was coherent enough to consent. The defense maintained that the encounter was consensual and that the suspects did not abandon Madison but dropped her off in a neighborhood where she could presumably find her way home or call for an Uber. Reggie's Bar faced significant scrutiny and potential penalties for its role leading to Madison's death. As I shared earlier, the bar was known to serve alcohol to minors. The scrutiny aimed to hold the bar accountable and prevent similar incidents by enforcing stricter regulations. The legal proceedings are currently still ongoing. This next entry is a very distressing case of filicide. This case gained widespread media attention due to the horrific nature of the crime and the legal proceedings that followed. John Battaglia, a father of two, committed one of the most unimaginable acts by murdering his own daughters, Liberty and Faith, in an act of revenge against his ex-wife, Mary Jean Pearl. John Battaglia was born on August 2, 1955, into a family that would profoundly shape his later life. His early years were marred by significant trauma and instability. John's mother committed when he was a child. This event understandably left a deep psychological scar. Additionally, his father was described as violent and abusive. These early experiences of violence and loss likely influenced John's later behavior and relationships. Despite the challenges in his personal life, John managed to achieve academic and professional success. He pursued a career in accounting, which provided him with financial stability and a semblance of normal life. However, beneath this facade of professional success lay a man struggling with deep-seated issues. Colleagues and acquaintances often describe John as intelligent and competent in his work, but his personal life was a stark contrast to his professional demeanor. John's relationship with Mary Pearl began like many others, filled with love, hope, and promise. The couple married and had two daughters, Liberty and Faith. However, it wasn't long before the cracks in their relationship began to show. John's violent tendencies and controlling behavior became increasingly apparent, leading to a strained and abusive marriage. Mary endured significant physical and emotional abuse during their time together, which ultimately led to their separation and divorce. The abuse that Mary suffered at the hands of John was well documented. There were numerous instances of physical violence, threats, and intimidation. Mary's decision to leave her husband was driven by a desire to protect herself and her daughters from his violence. Despite the separation, John continues to attempt to control Mary, instilling fear into her. This ongoing harassment included threatening phone calls, stalking, and more. The separation and subsequent divorce led to a protracted legal battle over custody and visitation rights. John's manipulative and controlling nature was visible throughout these proceedings. Despite his history of violence, he managed to secure visitation rights with his daughters. This decision would later prove to be fatal for Liberty and Faith. The legal system would see major public backlash later down the line due to this decision. On the evening of May 2nd, 2001, a scheduled visitation turned into a night of horror, something straight out of a movie. John Battaglia, in a heinous act of revenge, murdered his daughters Liberty and Faith, who were 9 and 6 respectively. The group was at John's Dallas, Texas apartment. The day began like all other visitation days, a routine mandated by the court despite John's violent history. John's ex-wife and mother of the girls had long been concerned about his erratic and abusive behavior. However, the legal system's inability to fully grasp the danger posed by John led to the unfortunate decision to allow unsupervised visits. John picked up his daughters and took them to his apartment. As the evening progressed, John decided to make a call to Mary. He told Liberty to call her mother and inform her of their activities. The girls were excited to speak with their mother and shared their day. Suddenly, the tone of the call shifted. John ripped the phone from Liberty and calmly taunted Mary, asking her why she wasn't stopping him. At first, Mary didn't understand the question, but after just a few seconds, she realized something was terribly wrong. The phone line remained open as John's voice faded and was replaced by the sounds of gunshots. Mary, on the other end of the line, was forced to listen to her daughter's final moments. She heard their pleas and screams before the line went silent. John had shot both girls in cold blood. The reasoning was to get revenge on his ex-wife and inflict max psychological pain against her. After the murders, John calmly left his apartment as if nothing had happened. He was later found at a nearby tattoo parlor where he was getting a tattoo of 2 roses, symbolizing his daughters. He was tracked down promptly and arrested. The immediate response to the murders was swift. The Dallas Police Department quickly launched an investigation into the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Liberty and Faith. Officers arrived at the crime scene within minutes of the initial call made by Mary, who reported hearing gunshots while on the phone with her daughters. Upon arriving at John's apartment, police officers were met with a disturbing scene. The bodies of Liberty and Faith were found in the living room, both having sustained multiple gunshot wounds. Ballistic analysis confirmed that the weapon used in the murders was a handgun owned by John. Forensic evidence indicated that both girls had been attacked at close range, with Liberty sustaining 2 wounds to the head and Faith receiving 3 in her back. Investigators also discovered chilling evidence on John's computer. There were searches for the effect of bullets on the human body, amongst other things. John's defense team filed numerous pretrial motions, arguing that he was not mentally competent to stand trial. They requested extensive psychological evaluations. His attorneys claimed that he was suffering from severe mental illness, including bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, which impaired his ability to understand the nature of his crime and the legal proceedings. During these hearings, expert witnesses provided conflicting testimonies. Some mental health professionals diagnosed John with serious mental disorders, citing his unpredictable behavior and violent history. However, other experts suggested that John was malingering, deliberately faking symptoms to avoid facing the death penalty. These experts pointed to evidence that John had conducted extensive research on how to manipulate the legal system, including studying past cases of defendants who were declared incompetent. Prosecutors detailed the premeditated nature of the murders, highlighting John's calculated actions and his history of violence against Mary. After a lengthy and emotionally charged trial, the jury found John Battaglia guilty of capital murder. The evidence against him, combined with the testimonies of witnesses, left little doubt about his guilt. The sentencing phase saw further emotional testimony, particularly from Mary, who described the ongoing trauma inflicted by John's actions and the devastating impact of losing her daughters. The jury sentenced John to death, concluding that his crime warranted the ultimate punishment. John's defense team immediately began the appeals process, again arguing that he was not mentally competent to be executed. This led to a series of appeals and legal maneuvers aimed at delaying his execution. However, each appeal ultimately failed. The courts found that John was faking symptoms of mental illness to avoid the death penalty. After years of legal battles and appeals, John Battaglia's execution was scheduled for February 1st, 2018. In the days leading up to the execution, his defense team made last-minute appeals, including a claim that the lethal injection drugs used by Texas were expired and could cause undue suffering. These appeals were also rejected by the courts. On the evening of February 1st, 2018, John was transferred to the Huntsville unit, where the execution was to take place. Mary, along with others, was present to observe the execution. As John was prepared for the lethal injection, he left his final words with Mary. He said, "Well, hi Mary Jean." John then turned to the warden and said, "I'll see y'all later. Bye, go ahead please." The lethal injection was administered and John was pronounced dead at 9:40 p.m. Hannah Graham was a second-year student at the University of Virginia, known for her academic achievements and vibrant personality. She was born on February 25, 1996 in Reading, England, and moved to the United States with her family when she was 5 years old. The Graham family settled in Fairfax County, Virginia, where Hannah grew up alongside her younger brother. From a young age, Hannah exhibited a strong aptitude for academics and athletics, participating in various sports, including skiing, cross-country running, and lacrosse. Her academic excellence earned her a place at UVA, where she received a scholarship to study global public health and cognitive science. Her personality and wide range of interests made her a beloved member of the UVA community. She was described by friends and family as intelligent, friendly, and full of life. Known for her quick wit and sense of humor, Hannah easily formed strong connections with those around her. With all this in mind, it made her sudden disappearance all the more shocking. It instantly pulled everyone back into reality. At any moment, in any place, your life can be flipped upside down. The night of September 12, 2014, Hannah attended an off-campus party with friends. As the evening progressed, she became separated from her group. Surveillance footage from the early hours of September 13th provides a detailed account of her movements throughout Charlottesville. Around 12:45 a.m., Hannah is seen on video at McGrady's Pub on Grady Avenue, engaging in conversation with a man. She appears to be intoxicated, which might have contributed to her disorientation. About 15 minutes later, she is captured on footage at a Shell gas station on Preston Avenue, across the railroad tracks from her apartment and the UVA campus. The video shows her running, then walking, possibly in an attempt to find her way back home. After another 5 minutes, cameras at Sal's Pizza on East Main Street show Hannah being followed by a man who later identifies himself to the police. This man stated that he was concerned for her safety because she seemed distressed. At exactly 1:08 a.m., Hannah and a man with dreadlocks, identified as Jesse Matthew Jr., enter Tempo Restaurant and Bar on 5th Street Southeast. Jesse Matthew Jr. buys alcohol and they spend about 15 minutes together before leaving the establishment. About 10 minutes from then, Hannah sends a text message to her friends saying, "I'm coming to a party, but I'm lost." This was the last known communication from her, and it is unclear whether the message was sent before or after leaving the bar. By the morning of September 14th, when Hannah had not returned home and missed a planned hiking trip, her friends reported her missing to the police. The search for Hannah Graham quickly became a priority for law enforcement in Charlottesville and beyond. The UVA community and the broader public rallied in support of the search efforts, distributing flyers, organizing search parties, and providing tips to the authorities. Around September 19th, investigators became particularly interested in 32-year-old Jesse, who was seen on camera with Hannah. Jesse was a 32-year-old nursing assistant at the UVA hospital. On the 20th, police executed search warrants at Matthew's apartment and car. During the searches, they discovered clothing items that raised suspicions. Specific items of clothing found in Matthew's apartment matched descriptions provided by witnesses who had seen him with Hannah. This evidence significantly strengthened the case against him. One camera at a mall in Charlottesville showed Jesse following Hannah closely and wrapping his arm around her waist. He was arrested and brought in for questioning by police in Galveston, Texas, but fled. He left the police station in his sister's blue Nissan Sentra, which led to a high-speed chase. It took several days before authorities could locate Jesse. Law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, joined in the search for Jesse. A warrant for his arrest was issued on charges of reckless driving and abduction with intent to defile. The search involved extensive ground and air operations. Flyers displaying Jesse were also distributed amongst the public. This led to dozens of tips pouring in immediately. Several of the tips mentioned that they saw a man matching Jesse's description near Gilchrist, Texas. Then on September 24th, a woman was on a beach in the same city and called authorities after recognizing Jesse out in public. Authorities arrived and found him camping on said beach. He surrendered without a fight. After his arrest, Jesse Matthew was extradited to Virginia to face charges related to Hannah Graham's disappearance. The evidence against him, including surveillance footage, witness testimonies, and items found in his apartment, built a relatively strong case for the prosecution. On October 18, 2014, nearly 5 weeks after Hannah's disappearance, human remains were discovered on an abandoned property in Albemarle County, Virginia. The property was located approximately 10 miles from the area where Hannah was last seen. Forensic analysis confirmed that the remains were those of Hannah Graham. The confirmation of Hannah's death brought a heartbreaking end to the search and shifted the focus of the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. The remains were found on a 2.5-acre property. This property was situated near US Route 29, a stretch of highway that had seen multiple disappearances of young women over the years, including that of Morgan Harrington, whose remains were found in a similar remote area. This discovery was made by volunteers from the Chesterfield County Sheriff's Department who had been assisting in the search efforts. The remains were scattered across a dried-up creek bed behind a vacant home, suggesting that they had been there for some time. Hannah's parents, Sue and John Graham, visited the site where her remains were found shortly after the announcement. They expressed profound gratitude to the law enforcement officials and all of the volunteers. The cause of Hannah's death was determined to be homicidal violence, though specific details about the manner of death were not publicly disclosed. The confirmation of her death also meant that the charges against Jesse would be more severe. During the investigation, forensic evidence revealed that Jesse was linked to other violent crimes, notably the 2009 murder of Virginia Tech student Morgan Harrington and a 2005 assault case in Fairfax, Virginia. These connections significantly bolstered the case against him, providing a pattern of violent behavior that spanned nearly a decade. Morgan Harrington disappeared on October 17, 2009 after attending a Metallica concert on the UVA campus. Her body was found 3 months later on a remote farm in Albemarle County, approximately 10 miles from where Hannah's remains were discovered. DNA evidence from Harrington's case matched the DNA profile from the 2005 Fairfax assault case. This same DNA was found in connection with Jesse Matthew during the investigation of Hannah Graham's disappearance, linking him to Harrington's murder. In September 2005, a 26-year-old woman was abducted and assaulted in Fairfax, Virginia. On October 20th, 2014, shortly after Hannah Graham's remains were found, Jesse was indicted on charges of first-degree murder, abduction with intent to defile, and penetration with an object in connection with the 2005 Fairfax case. Jesse initially pleaded not guilty for the 2005 case, but then entered an Alford plea, which allowed him to avoid admitting guilt while acknowledging that the prosecution had enough evidence to convict him. He was sentenced to 3 life terms without the possibility of parole. As for the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington, he took a guilty plea and received 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.